right now for some reaction to that epidemiologist and science communicator, Dr. Raywat Deonandan. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Your reaction to that news?
My reaction is I never know what you're going to ask me. And today it's dance studios. Tomorrow is going to be baking classes. I never know what it's going to be. My reaction is that I'm in favor of keeping as many things open as we can, if we can do it safely. And it sounds like this one can be managed. And they make a good argument, and that is that it's like a class. It's not like a gym where you've got hundreds of new people showing up every day. It's the same number of people. It's the same people, rather. And the number of exposures can be controlled that way. So I'm hopeful that this is one of those environments that can be controlled.
Okay. It sounds like a controlled environment, but here's the thing. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I know dance studios are hurting. I know dance parents are probably cheering right now. And I want to say, I think that is such a huge part of normal childhood development. Sports, dance, extracurriculars. I used to dance. It's a lot of work, though, Dr. Deonandan. It's cardio. You're moving. You're sweating. You're out of breath. It is exercise. It is physical activity. Why could you not apply some of those things, like a limit of 10 people? Everyone has to pre-register to a gym or a yoga studio or other boutique fitness places, especially in gyms where there are high ceilings or huge areas and people are very far apart. Could they not institute cohorts and do those things safely as well?
Yeah, I think you could. You make a very good point. But those things would have to be in place. The same people would show up every time. It would have to be a large group with high ceilings, good ventilation, maybe windows open. If you can have a situation where you're wearing masks, that's great. Anytime you've got a forceful exhalation or talking or singing or shouting, that's a problem. Dance, it sounds like the way it's been described to me is they're not actively trying to be aerobically energized. They're trying to work on the fundamentals, which I imagine is a little less strenuous. Being a middle-aged guy in his chair right now, I really can't tell you. But I think
you're not doing pliés right now.
As far as you know, no. But
okay.
Who knows? So I think your point is well taken, but it comes down to how much exertion you want to limit and how much other controls you want to put into place. But yes, it is possible to deploy many of these same strategies to make other kinds of activities acceptable as well.
I just spoke to Dr. Abdu Sharkawi, an infectious disease specialist who's been quite outspoken, and I was asking him about Halloween because today the province said quite clearly that kids should not be going door to door. As you know, Dr. Etch has already said that. And I was asking Dr. Sharkawi what he thinks about that, and I was surprised because he said, actually, I don't agree. I think Halloween can be done safely, and he said he thinks people can come up with a creative way to do so. Take a listen.
Halloween is an outdoor activity. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to modify it enough to make it safe. We're telling people not to go inside people's homes. We're telling people to try and prepackage things or to use tongs and to use liberal amounts of hand sanitizer and to shorten the duration of Halloween. So you don't go out for an hour and a half. Go out for 20, 25 minutes. Go down your street. What's wrong with doing that and doing it safely with your own kids? Let them enjoy the spirit of the occasion without causing undue anxiety, throughout. We've had so much of that in this pandemic that we need to pick our spots when we can do something safely. I think this is a great opportunity to do it.
Dr. Sharkawi speaking with me earlier, I was surprised to hear that from him. Where do you stand on this?
For the longest time, I've been saying we can get 95% of Halloween done quite perfectly well. It's that extra 5% we have to look into. And that 5% is going to strangers' houses and being close to them. Even in a non-pandemic year, I don't want a bunch of stinky kids at my door, and I'm sure they don't want to be near me either.
Stinky
right?
Kids?
Yeah,
Why are they stinky?
All kids are stinky.
What kind of neighborhood do you live in?
A stinky neighborhood, apparently. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, I think, what is Halloween? Halloween for kids is dressing up and going out in your community and seeing other people dressed up and being out and about in the fresh night air. We can still do that. If you want to go and get candy from strangers, which, by the way, is never advisable. If you want to get candy from strangers, you can do that safely, too, by setting up, vats at the end of your driveway, whatever you want to be. But the threat in a pandemic environment is multiple exposures throughout the evening, like hundreds of interactions between strangers that we can't trace later on if, in fact, an infection does happen. It makes contact tracing nearly impossible. So I'd recommend you go out with your kids and walk around and you look at things. Some people have said we can do trick or trunk, which is where you just, open your trunk of your car and there's a bunch of candy and people just walk by and grab it, which sounds creepy as well, I know. But there's no getting around the creepy factor when it comes to Halloween. But there are ways of doing this safely. I agree with him in spirit. We may disagree on what those safety measurements are, but in spirit, yes, 100%.
Chatting right now with Dr. Raywat Deonandan. It is 5:16. A lot of businesses have been complaining that even though they're permitted to be open in stage 2, the modified stage 2 has devastated their business. I had a restaurant owner on earlier, Don Santaguida. He's the owner of Vittoria Trattoria, and he was fined $880 for having his outdoor dining tent partially closed. I've got a clip of him here I'd like to play. He basically said he had only one side of the tent that was opened, and as per bylaw, it has to be 2 sides of the tent. He was warned on October the 10th, and then he was fined.
I'm going to say we were not 50% open, and I couldn't even modify it to be 50% open. And even at 30%, we struggle to keep heat in. But I can tell you the people that did sit there in the last 4 months, everyone has had a great experience. And there's plenty of airflow, in my opinion.
So it's a very emotionally charged issue, and I get that. But putting emotions aside and just looking at the science of this, how does a tent need to be set up to be safe? I'm just trying to get a sense of what needs to be open and what can be closed.
Yeah. I mean, this is not something I study in depth, but my feeling is that you need a cross breeze, a significant cross breeze at all times. So in New York, they had a problem with this. They had some sheds with one wall missing that were pretending to be outdoor dining. That's not the case. You essentially need 2 open walls with airflow going through them and maybe even no ceiling. That might help as well. So I'm sure there's a definition somewhere public health uses, but I would imagine it has to do with volume and frequency of airflow.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of tents that are just completely closed. I've seen some that are opened. It just seems like we need to have the clarity on this because it's not just one restaurant. There's been multiple. I mean, I walked through the Byward Market, walked along Preston, through Centertown, all tents, different shapes and sizes.
Yeah. I mean, a tent is not outdoors. Even though we're used to camping in tents and we think we're in the great outdoors, we're actually sleeping indoors. It's just your house is a little more flimsy when you're camping. The same applies here. You need missing walls to have maximum airflow to keep the viral infectious load well diluted. And the best way of doing that is no walls and no ceiling.
The Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Williams, said today that we've seen some plateauing in the numbers, but he was very vague. He said, we've sensed that our numbers are not as high as predicted. We're seeing some evidence of plateauing, but he didn't go into detail on that. What was your takeaway?
I don't see the same thing. I mean, you can't tell anything from the numbers right now because the testing is not the same as it was a couple of weeks ago. Testing is broken. We're almost reclaiming our testing capacity, but the backlog is being chipped away. We're only testing symptomatic people. We have testing by appointment. We have some people choosing not to get tested. And the wastewater analyses are showing that the disease is still surging in key parts like Ottawa. So I would not conclude that we're plateauing right about now.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan, always great to have you on the show. Appreciate this.
Thank you.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan, who joins us from time to time, giving us his perspective on some of the more local COVID issues today. He's an epidemiologist and science communicator at the University of Ottawa.